But first, 24 hours after news broke that Boston University researchers made COVID deadlier, the school says nothing to see here. That's despite new reporting that the university did not clear the research with federal authorities and essentially, possibly, went rogue. Credit where credit is due to the Daily Mail. This is their headline out just in the past couple of minutes. Top NIH director admits Boston lab that created new COVID strain did not clear research with agency and only learned of the details on dailymail.com. The federal watchdog who is supposed to oversee the research into the most deadly pathogens in the world only learned about a new COVID strain from dailymail.com. Daily Mail was the first to report the BU COVID creation yesterday. It sounds an awful lot like the research at the Wuhan lab that started this thing in the first place. We say started, to be fair. There's not conclusive evidence the virus came from a lab leak, but the Wuhan lab certainly did research making coronaviruses more deadly, and the pandemic started in Wuhan. You be the judge. No doubt that these studies and studying these viruses save lives. It's necessary research, and hopefully we have learned our lesson to be ahead of this stuff rather than letting the Chinese take the lead. But why would the Boston University researchers tell the world but keep federal watchdogs in the dark? They're keeping the details from the very people who were supposed to keep all of us safe. We're supposed to prevent a lab leak that could start a global pandemic. We also tipped off the Chinese, who often run spy rings in Boston for just this reason. Few of the recent headlines: Harvard professor found guilty of hiding ties to Chinese-run recruitment program. Spy school: Chinese military officer busted for posing as Boston University student, where all this was happening. Chinese cancer researcher accused of U.S. of smuggling vials admits to false statements. Boston University says in a statement, we want to address the false and inaccurate reporting about Boston University COVID-19 research. First, this research is not gain of function, meaning it did not amplify the Washington state SARS-CoV-2 virus strain or make it more dangerous. In fact, this research made the virus replicate less dangerous. Secondly, the research was approved by the Institutional Biosafety Committee. The Public Health Commission also approved the research. Still, it involved combining the more contagious parts of the Omicron strain onto the more deadly parts of the original COVID virus at a school targeted by Chinese intelligence. To be fair and to be accurate, I am not a doctor, but it does sound bad. Dr. Amesh Adalja is here, adjunct professor, Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. Doc, it's always good to see you, and you've got a lot sounder hand and calmer hand sometimes than the rest of us all do. Does it make sense to you why BU wouldn't tell NIH they were doing this?
The latest reporting is that actually BU didn't use NIH funds to do this research, so that wouldn't prompt them to report this to the NIH. But in general, I think transparency is good, but they may have been maybe a little bit murky on what the actual reporting requirements are when they're using their own internal funds versus using NIH taxpayer funds. That's at least what BU has said, and I take them at their word.
Still, though, you think about dealing with COVID that has killed 1 million+ people. This sounds an awful lot like making it more dangerous or more contagious or a combination of the two or seeing what's happening. No doubt that there's real scientific value in doing this, but it just seems pretty sloppy that there wouldn't be a discussion of it. What are we missing?
Well, I think what we want to really emphasize is that this type of research is necessary. And the key thing that we worry about is it being done safely? And when you're talking about the biosafety level 3 lab at Boston University, I don't really have concerns that there was anything sloppy in terms of their laboratory acumen, the way they handled these pathogens, the way they protected their workers. All of that is likely really intact. It's not something like what we were worried about at Wuhan, where things might have been being done at a lower biosafety level. But as this is something that's under the microscope, it's really important for this to be transparent, because what we don't want is this research to be completely compromised or people saying it's not necessary when it does serve a purpose, because we're still trying to unlock what makes COVID-19 so deadly in certain people, what makes the Omicron strain less deadly than the original version of this virus. Those are important questions that'll help us. And what we don't want are politicians then coming down and regulating this to the point where it actually can't happen. So I urge a lot of the people that are doing this to be transparent about it so that we don't avoid these types of scandals and Daily Mail headlines.
Yeah, there is also this other sort of overarching concern about universities not necessarily being as concerned about the Chinese and other foreign intelligence agencies who are trying to infiltrate and get access to the best American minds. Of all the statements BU put out, they talked about biosafety hazard level and on and on and on. They didn't talk at all about trying to make sure that our adversaries don't gain access to the best research we have, especially about a virus that possibly came out of a Chinese military biosafety or bioweapons lab.
Well, the thing is that this virus construct that they made is actually not that sophisticated in terms of what the Chinese themselves couldn't do themselves or weren't already doing at Wuhan Institute of Virology. So I'm not really worried about an information hazard here. I don't think that this is something that is kind of an earth-breaking or shattering type of advancement in coronavirus biology that the Chinese are dying to have. There are concerns about that with other pathogens and other experiments, but I don't think this one comes anywhere near that threshold.
Okay, fair enough. Boston Lab makes new deadly COVID strain, and we're glad to have you on to make us feel better about this, because you're right that the headlines mean a lot. We're going to show you what the BU researchers allegedly did, or told everybody that they did. They removed what is called the spike protein from Omicron. That's, I guess, what makes it more contagious. Attached it to the original Wuhan strain, infected the mice with the hybrid COVID variant, and 80% of the rodents died. I guess, is there not an understanding in the scientific community just of how scared the rest of the world is of something like this at a time like this?
I think this is where there's a role for scientific communication, to be transparent, to be open, and explain that the original version of this virus, the Wuhan strain, is a 100% fatal to mice. This hybrid was 80% fatal, so it wasn't as dangerous as the original version. And what they were trying to do is unlock the mystery of Omicron. We all talk about the fact that Omicron is milder, and we're trying to understand, is it the spike protein that makes it milder, or is it some other part of the virus? And that's why they did this. And I think it's really important to remember that the Boston scientific community in the BU lab is not something that does shoddy work. It's not that we have to worry about this escaping or infecting other individuals. This was kind of a planned experiment, and they published the results. It wasn't as if it was hidden. It was actually put on a preprint server that the Daily Mail found. It wasn't as if the Daily Mail was looking through trash and found some notes on this experiment.
As I said at the beginning, steady and reasonable is why you've guided us through this for the past couple of years. It's good to see you, sir. Thank you. Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.